Okay, go.
Just want to start today with a trigger warning disclaimer. This podcast contains descriptions of death and drowning. Hi, I'm Katie Carpenter.
I'm Terry Kovanitz.
We apologize for any and all mistakes today as we begin this episode of Titanic Transcripts.
The witness has been sworn. Will you give your full name and address?
Fredrick Sammis, 143 Mount Prospect Avenue, Newark, New Jersey.
And your business?
I am Chief Engineer of the Marconi Wireless Telegraph Company of America.
And state your age, please.
I will have to figure it. It is something I can never remember. I was born in 1877 anyway.
And you are Chief Engineer of the Marconi Company?
Yes, sir.
How far does your jurisdiction extend?
I do not know that I quite understand that question as put.
How extensive is your jurisdiction? What is your authority, and over what territory are you supposed to act?
Well, with respect to our territory, the American company has jurisdiction over the United States and its possessions, and on American registry ships only. My part of the business is to see that the ships are properly fitted and the land stations are kept in good working order, and generally, I have to do with the technical side of the business, not the traffic. We have a separate manager of that.
Are you an officer of the British Marconi Company?
No, sir.
Or the Marconi Company in any other country?
No, sir.
Have you anything to do with Mr. Marconi's personal arrangements with the government of Italy?
No.
So that your part of the work is such as you have described it?
Yes, sir.
Where were you when the accident happened to the Titanic?
In bed, asleep.
In New York?
In Newark.
When did you first learn of this accident?
My best recollection is that it was the next morning when I got into the office. I discovered I had carried the paper under my hand all the morning with the news of the accident in it and had not noticed it.
What paper did you have in your hand?
The New York Times.
And what time did you reach your office?
I should think it was about 9:30, my usual time.
And you reached your office before you heard of this accident?
Yes, sir. I may say I had some very important business with a fellow passenger, or I should not have done so.
That does not indicate the indifference of your place of residence to incidents going on in the outside world, does it?
Hardly. I think I ought to be allowed to explain that we were looking for a transatlantic site, and I had arranged with one of my men to meet me at my home that morning and to send him down to the county clerk's office in New Brunswick. And we were discussing this matter, and I took my paper and put it in my pocket, and we were discussing it when we got to the office, and for that reason, I did not open my paper or read it.
It did not take you very long after you arrived at your office to discover something had happened in the world, did it?
No, sir, it did not.
And what did you find there?
The Titanic had struck an iceberg, I believe. I heard of the accident by some means or other. I think probably from Mr. Bottomley. Of course, the office was all astir with it as soon as I got in.
And did you find many people there looking for information?
I do not think there were many people there that morning at that time.
Did you remain at the office during the day?
I do not think I left it very much for the next 5 days.
Up to the arrival of the Carpathia?
Yes. I did go home, but not any longer than I felt absolutely necessary.
While you were at the office, were you bestirring yourself about the business of the company?
Disturbing myself?
Bestirring yourself.
Oh, yes, sir. Always. Normally so.
Did you have occasion to send any message yourself to the Carpathia?
Not that I remember. Some of the messages which Mr. Marconi has already offered in evidence, I think, were sent at my request and by my judgment, together with that of Mr. Bottomley. I knew they were sent.
I will come right to the point and ask you whether the following message, which was intercepted by the Chief Wireless Operator, J.R. Simpson, Chief Electrician, United States Navy, is familiar to you. 8:30 p.m. to Marconi Officer, Carpathia, and Titanic. Arrange for your exclusive story for dollars in 4 figures. Mr. Marconi agreeing. Say nothing until you see me. Where are you now? J.M. Sammis, Operator C.
I only know about that exact message from what I have read in the papers. If you will allow me, I will describe this unpleasant business, because it is unpleasant, as it has brought upon me a countrywide publicity that I little desire, and has pointed the finger of scorn at me by my neighbors, simply because in their estimation, either intentionally or otherwise, the date and time of these messages, and when they were first published at any rate, were not disclosed. In the second place, because it has not been stated, I believe thus far, that at 8:30 the ship was either across the end of her pier or nearly so. I sat in my office at 8:10 on that night and was told by the operating department that the ship had passed the Narrows, and the Seagate station itself is at the Narrows, New York Harbor. It is not my desire to throw onto anybody else any responsibility for the sense of this message. Mr. Marconi did agree that the boys, when they got ashore, should be allowed to sell the report of their personal experience, which numerous other people on board the ship did. In these days, when corporations are counted as not caring very much about their employees or what happens to them or what they get, it seemed to me that the men who had been responsible mainly and chiefly for saving 700 lives ought in some way to be recognized substantially. It was not I who originated this scheme or this arrangement at all. The arrangement was made, however, and the information was telephoned to Seagate Station, which I say is at the Narrows, New York, to explain to these boys. In telephoning that, I told them, I know the boys are exhausted, but give them this news. Maybe it will spur them on and make them feel better. I remember definitely telling them that.
With whom were you talking at that time?
To Mr. Davidson, the man temporarily in charge of the Seagate Station. He is not regularly in our employ, but he was sent there because he was an expert operator and one of the best men we have ever had. But he was not regularly under our control. He was sent there, and we made use of his services, and he handled the wireless entirely. I have a statement from him, and he made an affidavit that messages about which so much noise has been made were of his own construction, and that he realizes, as we all do, that they were not gems of English literature, but they were, on the spur of the moment, instructions to the men, carrying out and explaining to them the arrangements of which had been made.
We are not passing upon the literary character of these productions.
Well, I do not think I ought to
And
be...
the work of digging into the story you are telling has not been entirely pleasant to me. But these messages were picked up and transmitted to me by the Secretary of the Navy, and they bear your signature, and I would like to know whether or not you are responsible for that injunction of secrecy to the operators of the Carpathia.
There was no injunction of secrecy whatsoever, except with respect to their actions after they got ashore.
I will read one. Seagate to Carpathia, 8:12. Do you know what time the Carpathia passed quarantine?
I was told that night that she passed the battery at 8:10. I have not verified that. She was certainly very close, however.
As a matter of fact, she did not land until 9:30.
You mean the passengers did not land?
No, I mean the boat was not made fast to the Cunard dock until 9:30. Am I right, Mr. Franklin?
Yes. I should say that half an hour, or 45 minutes possibly, would be consumed from coming from the battery up to the pier in the slow way they usually go.
Here is a telegram which was intercepted by the Navy Department.
May I interrupt to say that the one you have already quoted is quite evidently erroneously copied. The initial, you may note, is not correct. The words after the signature have absolutely no meaning to me. I say those are self-evident facts to anybody. I did not know what these messages contained until I read them in the paper.
I will proceed. Seagate to Carpathia, 8:12 p.m. Say, old man, Marconi Company taking good care of you. Keep your mouth shut and hold your story. It is fixed for you, so you will get big money. Do your best to clear. Now, do you know anything about that message?
Only what I have already stated. I read it in the paper.
And you disavow all responsibility for it?
I do not. I telephoned the information to Seagate. I have already stated that such an arrangement had been made with reference to the boys' stories after they got ashore. It is quite evident that in the vernacular of the wireless men, the last few words which you have just quoted were sent in response to my injunction that perhaps this would spruce the boys up a little bit and make them feel happy and they would clear their traffic. That is what is meant by the sentence, do your best to clear. In other words, get your messages off, all you have, hurriedly.
He could not have been at the dock at that time, or that could have been sent to him personally.
I understand that the man was found telegraphing after he was tied up to the pier, absolutely unconscious of the fact that he had arrived there.
Which operator?
Mr. Bride.
But Cottam, the regular operator of the Carpathia, left the ship immediately when she arrived, did he not?
I understand so, yes.
Did he do that in obedience to your request to meet you at the Strand Hotel?
He probably did, yes.
Why did you want him to meet you?
Simply so that he could get in touch with the New York Times reporter with whom the arrangement had been made and give him the story.
Then we may presume the arrangement he made with the Times and carried out was with your consent.
With the consent of the company, Mr. Marconi, and Mr. Bottomley as well. I simply passed along the arrangement which had been made.
But with your consent?
Yes. I had not very much to say. He did not need my consent.
Well, with your concurrence?
With my approval, yes, sir. My unofficial approval.
Did he meet you at the Strand Hotel, or was he to meet you?
No.
Were you there?
I was at the Strand Hotel, yes. That was the headquarters of the New York Times.
502 West 14th Street?
Yes, sir.
And whom did you go there to meet, Mr. Cottam?
I went there to meet the operators, yes.
To meet Mr. Cottam?
Not Mr. Cottam any more than Mr. Bride, particularly, but to meet both of them.
Did you go to the site of the Carpathia at all when she docked?
Yes.
At what time?
I have not the least idea. It took me 45 minutes to get across the street. At the time I got to the Carpathia, I lost all sense of time. I should say, roughly, it might have been a couple hours after she had docked.
And did you find Mr. Bride there?
Yes.
But had you seen Mr. Cottam in the meantime?
No.
Did you go to the Canard Dock with Mr. Marconi?
Yes.
Was that the first time he had been there that evening?
I assume so.
Was he with you at the Strand Hotel?
No.
Was anybody with you?
You could not be in the Strand Hotel that night without having somebody with you. There were Times men and all the other newspaper men.
Yes, but who went with you to the Strand Hotel?
Oh, nobody.
Who left the Strand Hotel with you?
One of the Times men, but I have forgotten his name.
How much was Mr. Cottam, the operator on the Carpathia, to get for that story?
The Times agreed to pay $1,000 for the two stories. I do not know how they were going to divide it. I did not interest myself in it.
For his and Cottam's story of the loss of the Titanic?
Yes.
With whom was that arrangement made?
With the New York Times.
I know, but who made it in behalf of those boys?
You mean what representative of the Times?
No. Who made the arrangement on behalf of the company?
Well, everybody had something to do with it. I had something to do with it. Mr. Bottomley had something to do with it. It was a general conversation carried on by the New York Times office and our office and Mr. Bottomley's house.
Was the contract on the part of the operators completed? Did they give their stories?
I think they did.
Both to the same paper?
I think so.
And did they receive their money?
I understand they did, and more besides.
How much more?
I understand they got $250 more apiece than was promised them.
That is, they got $750 apiece?
That is my rough recollection. I did not see the money or handle it, and I do not wish to. That is hearsay.
In order that we may clear this up as we go along, were you to have any part in this yourself?
Absolutely none.
Was Mr. Bottomley to have any part in it?
Absolutely none.
And you have had no part in it?
No, sir.
Mr. Cottam says he has not yet received his money.
Perhaps that is Mr. Cottam's fault? Perhaps he's not been accessible?
Is the money being held for him by anybody, to your knowledge?
I presume if anybody were holding it, it would be the Times.
Nobody else?
Well, I understood that Mr. Cottam had received his money.
He had not when he was on the stand a day or two ago.
I understand that he has since.
Were these payments made through yourself or any other officer of the Marconi Company?
I have already stated that I did not see the money, did not expect to, and did not wish to.
Do you mean that you did not see a check or an envelope containing the money?
I have not taken part in the transaction one iota, one way or the other.
Let us clear this up as we go along. I think it is a most distasteful matter for you, to you, as it is to the committee, and I think to the public.
I have not done anything I am ashamed of, and if I can clear my record that the newspapers have impugned, I would want to do it, and I'm sure you would want to help me.
Have you done anything in this matter about which we have been just speaking that you are very proud of?
I have not done anything I'm ashamed of.
I did not ask you that. I want to know whether you are proud of it.
Yes, I am proud of the fact that being an employer of labor and being the superior of poorly paid men, or mediumly paid men, men who do not see very much of this world's goods, I will do them a good turn honestly if I can, and that I consider I have done. I know of no law that can forbid a man selling his personal experience after he comes ashore, and we have no rule by which we could prevent them from doing it.
Then am I to understand from what you say that, so far as your opinion goes, this practice to which I am calling attention will be continued?
Well, I should consider it very dangerous indeed, and I had intended to bring it to your attention, to forbid them by some hard and fast rule which you have indicated along that line, because the result would be that you would obtain the very results you now have. It would seem only reasonable that if no recognition whatsoever, in standing or financially, should be made of the efforts of these men to get the news off the ships, they would not stir themselves very much to do it. I believe it could be regulated. I do believe an error was made. I believe it would have been better to have sent this news to the Associated Press and let them settle with the boys if they liked. The news then would have had more general distribution, and there would not have been any sore toes.
I have not seen any sore toes, and I do not know of anybody who is complaining of any myself. But do you not think it would have been better to communicate this intelligence to your office in answer to the numerous inquiries made by Mr. Marconi from the time of the accident until the arrival of the Carpathia, and then disseminate it to the public that they might be relieved of anxiety under which they were suffering?
With all due deference to the question, my judgment would not be that it was the best course to pursue, for this reason, that the International Telegraph Convention has already placed itself on record as putting news dispatches last in the list, ship service telegrams first, paid passenger telegrams second, and then press messages.
How general is this custom of receiving and accepting money for exclusive stories of sea disaster?
I should say it was quite general. I perused the copies of messages from the shore stations. I saw messages from practically every paper in New York City asking practically everybody, from the captain down to the survivors, for exclusive stories. Whether they got them or not, I am unable to say, except that I did see in the New York World, on the day after the Carpathia arrived, that they had published an exclusive story 2 hours and a half before the New York Times had theirs on the street.
The committee are not very much concerned with that.
Well, it demonstrated that there were not exclusive stories.
If this custom about which we are talking, and which was followed by Binns, the operator in the Republic disaster...
But Binns sent his wireless messages from the ship.
All right, I do not care where they came from. If this custom, which was followed by Binns, and which you say is quite general among wireless operators...
No, pardon me. I did not say quite general among wireless operators. I said it was quite general on the part of the papers to endeavor to secure exclusive stories.
Is it a recognized standard of ethics among operators?
No, absolutely not.
Injunctions of secrecy, such as these messages indicate, and the hope of private reward, such as you say is often the case...
I do not remember of having made such a statement.
Well, such as you do not regard.
As dishonorable?
As dishonorable. I will ask the stenographer to read the beginning of my question. Injunctions of secrecy, such as these messages indicate, and the hope of private reward, such as you say is often the case, might cut some figure in the ability of the public and even owners of the ship and the people vitally affected to obtain the news, might they not, if the custom be recognized among operators?
I should say absolutely they would have nothing to do with it. At such times, and at all times, our operator on the ship has his messages censored by the captain. It is a part of our contract that the captains shall censor messages. The operators are there on board in the same manner that any other officer is on board, and they hold the position of junior officer. The captain would have nothing whatever to do, and would have had nothing to do in this case except file the message, tell the man to send it, and it would have gone on to whomever it was addressed, and at any time had it been filed. The matter has now been thrown over onto Mr. Bride and Mr. Cottam, who did the best they knew how. They followed their rules blindly and were worked up. The responsibility, I must say, if there is responsibility existing, was on the part of the captain, if he realized that the people were waiting for news. And if so, did not realize it, why should our men have realized it? He should have filed a brief account, and the captain had such a message requesting such an account from the White Star Line.
You heard Mr. Marconi say a few minutes ago that he did not regard it as a desirable practice, and that he thought it not ought to obtain.
Yes, sir.
And you disagree with him?
Not altogether. I would say that you would have to be very careful what rules you might make, or you would defeat the purpose of the rule. I think that is self-evident.
Mr. Sammis, do you fix the wage of these operators?
Of which operators?
The wireless operators of your company.
I have only jurisdiction over operators on American ships, of which there are 4.
And do you fix their wages?
I have something to do with it. I make recommendations.
And what are the ships to which you refer?
The St. Paul, the St. Louis, the Philadelphia, and the New York.
And how many operators are there on each ship?
1.
How much do they receive in wages?
$45 a month.
And board in addition?
Yes. It is an American scale of pay on an American ship, not an English scale of pay on an English ship.
There's a difference?
Money goes twice as far on the other side as it does here.
How much did Cottam receive?
I do not know.
Or Bride?
I do not know.
What is the English scale of wage for the wireless operators?
I do not know. I should say it is considerably less than our scale of wages here.
Suppose it were £4 a month.
I should say that is equal to $45 here.
I did not ask you that. I asked you if it was £4.
Well, you said suppose it was £4.
I said this. Suppose the wages were £4 a month. That would be $20. Would you regard that as a good wage?
I should regard it as an equivalent to the American scale.
Then you would regard it as a fair wage.
Not so good a wage as I should like to see them get.
You have fixed the wages here, and you say that is equivalent to the wages here.
No, with all respect, we do not fix the wages here.
What part do you have in it?
We are governed by the considerations that control any other commercial company. We have to show a balance between that which we receive and that which we spend.
So you are trying to make a profit, in other words.
We are trying to make both ends meet. If that were not the case, we might pay more money.
You said with some pride that you paid the American operators on the St. Paul and those other ships $45 a month. Now you say that $45 a month to the St. Paul operator would be the equivalent of $20 a month to the operator on the Carpathia.
I'm not aware that I exhibited any pride as to the $45 a month wage.
You've exhibited by your testimony considerable solicitude concerning the reward of labor.
Yes, I still believe people getting paid as much as their employers can afford to pay them.
Do you think you are paying the wireless operators on the Philadelphia and St. Paul enough?
We have no difficulty in getting good men at that price.
So you do not contemplate any raises in wages?
If the steamship people will pay more for the service, then yes, by all means.
I did not ask you that. I asked you if you contemplate any increased scale of wages.
That is the only thing that could govern my contemplation of increased wages, increased returns.
I want your viewpoint. You say that $20 a month paid Bride and Cottam on the English scale of wages is the equivalent of $45 a month on the St. Paul.
I should say it would be the equivalent of $40 in America, but I have never been to England.
I do not ask you that. This is simply a voluntary statement that takes up unnecessary space on the record.
I am sorry.
Just answer this, please. It is the equivalent of $40 a month in America, is it?
I have been led to believe that from hearsay, from people who have been on the other side and people who have lived in England. I have not lived there.
Then do you regard this as a fair wage?
What do you mean by fair?
Just.
That does not help me much.
Appropriate?
It is all we can afford to pay.
Exactly. Then you are paying all that you can afford.
Exactly, and showing a loss on the ships I have mentioned.
But you have no difficulty in getting operators.
No, sir.
Do you know whether the British ships have any difficulty in getting operators?
I do not think they have. I have never heard that they have any.
I'm coming back to the point where you say it is absolutely essential that the operators be given the right to sell exclusive stories of happenings at sea in order that their wage may be brought to a desirable point.
I made no such statement.
Well, you approximated it.
I think not. I said you would have to be very careful of the rules you might make against this. I am in agreement with Mr. Marconi that it is undesirable that the thing should work out as it has done. But you have to be very careful what rules you may lay down, or the men would not send any news at all.
They would mutiny?
In a polite way. I do not think they would mutiny, no.
Have you had any difficulty on that point?
Never.
Why should you expect it?
I should expect a man to do that for which he would be commended, that for which he would receive recognition. I should say that if you forbade him receiving such compensation or return, he would not be apt to spur himself to write up a story of his own experiences for the sake of the public.
Then you think the public might lose the benefit of his experience if he were not permitted to sell it exclusively?
I take it that your idea is that they should send off news messages from the ship.
No, sir. I am not talking about any voluntary action on the part of the wireless operator.
Then I misunderstood you.
I am talking about replies to messages sent by Mr. Marconi, sent by Mr. Franklin, sent by people representing those who had been lost in this wreck. And I am asking you whether or not this custom or habit or practice, of which you do not seem to wholly disapprove, of selling the experiences of operators at sea in disasters of that kind, had anything to do with the failure to get that information here promptly.
Absolutely nothing whatever. I should say that the boys obeyed their rules, the rules of conscience and the rules of the International Telegraph Convention, which they were forced to do. They followed them blindly. I believe I should have done the same in their place.
I will let this personal eulogy stand for itself and ask you how you happened to go to the Strand Hotel with the Times representative that night.
Simply to get him in touch with the men when they came off the ship.
And to see that the news was obtained by the New York Times.
Yes.
You've spoken of rewarding the services of these operators. Mr. Bride is here, and at the risk of saying something that I am not called upon to say, I want to observe that Mr. Bride was so loyal to the Titanic, and so obedient to its commander, and so courageous in its distress, that he refused to leave the Titanic in a lifeboat, and stayed on the ship until 1 minute before she sank, because the captain had not given him permission to leave, and he remained at the apparatus all that time, ticking of the fate of that ship. I want to know whether it would not be more creditable to you and to your company to encourage that kind of gallantry and heroism and fidelity by leaving the question of reward for such service to the public, rather than seal his lips with an injunction of secrecy, so that he might receive a pittance from some private source.
We did not seal his lips. We provided the means for unsealing them.
Did you tell him to shut his mouth?
I did not.
Did you tell him to agree to nothing until he saw you?
Not in those words. I have told you.
Answer me now. Did you tell him to say nothing until he saw you?
I gave him the information that I have already stated, that the Times wanted him to tell the story of his own personal experience after he got ashore.
Did you tell him in any wireless message the New York Times wanted this story?
No.
Did you tell him to say nothing until you see me?
I gave the information which probably was responsible for that message. Yes, sir.
In your words, you put an injunction on him.
No, I did not.
You expected him to disregard it?
He did exactly what I told him to do. There was no injunction on him whatever. He could not possibly have sent a message, had I desired it, or had anybody desired it, in the time available before he got to the dock. It was absurd to think such a thing would be possible.
But the Navy Department has picked up a message that was sent 33 minutes after that.
That is not a views dispatch of 1,000 or 1,500 words.
I do not like your disposition to avoid my direct questioning. I will repeat my last question, and I wish you to be careful with your answer. I spoke to you a moment ago about a message at 8:12 that night, before the Carpathia had passed quarantine.
Has that been determined absolutely?
I have it in the record the exact moment the vessel passed quarantine.
I have been informed by the Marine Department of one telegraph company that she passed the battery at 8:10.
You cannot swear to anything about it.
No, sir.
So I will not take your testimony on that point. Well, the arrogance of Smith and the obstinance of Sammis has led to a feisty episode here.
Oh, yeah, this was
My
great.
goodness.
Except
Wow.
for the fact that Mr. Fredrick Sammis is like a character out of a farce. I mean,
Yes.
in the beginning,
Well put.
he's like, oh, my age? I mean, I was born in
could say?
1877, and then, I didn't,
Take it from there.
okay, the exact time I found out, well, let's see, I did have my paper
And time stood
under my
still,
arm.
but it took me 45 minutes to get across the street.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, normally it wouldn't be under my arm, but you must know, I had,
Yes, he sounds like he was
yeah, it was just
written
very...
and created, not actually...
Yeah.
Yes. And very condescending Smith was to Sammis.
Yes.
Just like-
And I'm glad to have Sammis snap
Oh,
back.
he
because
did. Serious
although
snappage.
I can see why Sammis is in hot water. His name is attached to some very bad sounding messages, but also you hear him speak and you know that there's no way he sent a telegram
Right.
that started with "Say old man."
Right.
Keep your mouth shut.
And like you said, the words after the signature didn't
Yeah.
have any meaning. When I
Yeah.
was reading it, I'm like, what? So, yeah. And a lot of it seems to be semantics, but we're just going to argue those tiny word details instead of discuss what really happened. And no wonder there was no one at the Strand Hotel.
Yeah,
Again, your farce. The comic running this way and running that way, and everybody.
Yeah, of course, no one was
everybody's
there.
running and all passing each other, but not seeing each other and turning.
Then the movie would be over. I like when he asked who was there, and he was just like, "Well, you couldn't be there without somebody. There's all these workers, and it's the times."
Oh my gosh! Yeah, it was really, really like just farcical, like you said.
It was just a really interesting one, and I agree with both of them in a way. Like, I understand his point.
Yes.
Of course, they should be compensated for their story. They just went through, a terrible thing. They don't get paid enough, and as we learned, they stop getting paid when the ship sinks.
Right.
So, of course, but then, the whole, keep your mouth shut and, get over here, and of course you don't want it to undermine their professionalism or their conscience or things that they should do for the sake of humanity, not just, this is going to be really great when I sell it.
Well, and I honestly don't think that's what happened here.
No, I don't think so
I think
at all.
they were just so busy letting survivors' families know that
there wasn't a mention of it once in any testimony that we've heard, which I don't think anyone would say it, but still, I mean, they all, from every person we've heard, they got right to work, they did their work, and then Mr. Sammis says, too, the order of how they're supposed to send things out. Mm-hmm. So no wonder people weren't getting their messages that they wanted. If the second in the order was the paid personal messages of the survivors, he had to get all those out.
And then also I did not realize that the say nothing till you talk to us came while they were docking. I mean, he's right. What can you say in that time now?
Yeah, exactly.
Because the passengers are getting off and they're going to say it all. Yeah. So there's no exclusivity, like you said. And there was a story that was released hours before the New York Times one anyways. Yes. Because the New York Times knew about it in order to release their story, and I like that they're considered the operators of the Marconi things were considered junior officers. Mm-hmm. That's pretty propsy.
Yeah, it reminded me of that when he was describing it. Though I liked how he was describing it because it reminded me that their job is sort of like when you're a translator. Yes, you're not there. Like that's why they wear all black, right, and that's. Yes, you're supposed to be invisible, kind of, and you don't interject your own opinion.
Which is why I can't be.
My face wouldn't let me be an interpreter in any way or a translator. But you're not really there. You're a device. Yeah, it just. So they can't be in trouble for messages they sent, Cottam and Bride, because they were given from someone else and they're just doing their job. Like you said, they're following it blindly, which is what you're supposed to do.
And it sounds like the way, like a lot of discussion over the wage, a lot of back and forth on that. And $45 is like $
45 is $1,483.
Shut up. Well, no wonder then. That's a decent wage. I mean, not for a month. But you don't have to have a hotel or a house.
True. That's true.
Yeah, family
and free food.
And then the money they got for the room and board. The money they got from the article was $750. Which is $25,000. I would be selling.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh,
Heck
for sure.
Sing like a canary. What do you want to hear?
Yeah. Let's build some generational wealth.
Yes.
I also really it doesn't have to do with anything, but two things that I really liked. When Sammis is like, "Well, we can all agree it wasn't a gem of English literature."
There was some, yes.
And then when Senator Smith says, well, I'll just leave you with that personal eulogy and then move on. What a burn!
Yeah, burn.
Personal eulogy.
So pithy.
Yeah. Yeesh. You that doesn't know your age.
Eulogizing personally over there.
Yeah, I thought that was...
And then the no toes.
That. Yeah, the sore toes.
Yeah. There's really some...
gems of English literature.
Some verbal bards back and forth. Yeah, gems of English literature. Well done. And it just got more and more heated.
Yeah, I will give 1 point to Smith for acknowledging that Bride did his work correctly and stayed on the ship till the last minute because the captain didn't tell him to leave.
Yeah.
And, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes.
At least he did that. But, he was they're both in rare form, and I'm
excited to see the next episode. Yes, indeed. So, until then, we'll see you next time.
Bye. As always, thank you for listening. Please be sure to let us know what you're thinking in the comments or at titanictranscripts@gmail.com. Also, be sure to check out our Facebook page, Titanic Transcripts, for more interesting tidbits and general discussion.